Hello, and welcome to this live stream where we will be focusing on performance. My name is Bård, and I have with me Vasil, which is lead frontend at Crystallize. Say hello to the internet, Vasil.
Hey, hello.
So we will be a little bit nerdy, but also showing simple tools that even a manager can use, so to speak. So if you're managing a project or owning a web shop or a website, we will show some very specific things that you can benefit from. We will also talk about the next thing that Google is introducing in March of 2024 this year, which is the INP, which is a new metric they will be using for basically setting the core web vital score, which is how Google ranks performance. Google decides, kind of, because that's where most people are getting traffic and placing ads. So we'll talk about that. But as we say in Crystallize, let's go milliseconds hunting.
Yep.
And let's first start with a little bit overview in terms of why would you care about page speed? And there are different dimensions. I'll take some points in the beginning, but if we start with the environment, so the faster your site is, the less computing power it requires, the more optimized in terms of data traffic. It transfers less data. And finally, also, if you're using a distributed delivery network, if you're delivering the data close to the customer, so local data, you also spend less energy. So this here also translate actually directly into CO2 consumption and how much energy that you can save by using less data transfer. So that's an important point, and there's a lot of organizations that are looking for how can they improve their footprint, basically, on the environment. But on the business side, increased conversion. Basically, a faster website will lead to more sales. People are buying more if the web shop is fast. There are also concrete numbers on this. Basically, and these numbers come from large stores like Amazon and
Walmart.
Walmart
Yeah.
and others, right? And basically, one of these takeaways is that the conversion rate will go up between 1% and 3% if your page loads in under a second. And there's a formula which we will also get back to here. But basically, faster means more sales. Yeah, we have seen that several times with clients going live from another platform, switching to Crystallize, having improved performance and seeing sales records. Actually, also on the week of going live, so directly connected to the performance. But as a user, Vasil, what do you like more?
Yeah. So as a user, of course, when your page loads immediately, right? So you can start using it right away instead of waiting every time. That's something very valuable and makes people actually stick to your site, which I think is important because there are so many alternatives out there. So everything you can do really to kind of keep users on the site, and that's where actually also the performance really matter.
Yeah.
Make it available, make it interactive, make it so engageable, so people just stick to your site.
Yeah. How many times have you left from a website because it's just loading too slow? And if it's
Yes,
really
exactly.
fast, you keep clicking more pages, right?
Yeah. You get frustrated and then you just leave.
Yeah.
Simple as that.
So faster is better. That's what we're talking about.
Yeah.
And one thing that you may not be aware of is that if you're using Google Ads, so you're paying Google for ads, and the price you pay for ads depends on your page experience is the metric they use, where performance or core web vitals is a part of this ranking, which if it's really, really bad to perfect can be a factor of 8. So it's really a big difference of what you pay in ads actually. So that's important. If you don't pay for ads and just use organic search, Google will also rank you better if your site is faster. So pretty strong arguments here, where you pay less to drive traffic to your website, you get more organic traffic. The traffic that lands there has a better experience and converts better. Pretty compelling. So what we have done also here in this context is we have a simple calculator, which you can find on our website, crystallize.com, and then you have the PageSpeed ROI calculator there. And we preloaded this calculator now with the URL. We have no affiliation with the URL that we're loading, but we took a known web shop. And then you get the scores of the performance versus one of the examples that we use, which is a boilerplate running on Crystallize, which is optimized for performance. We will take a look at that later. And basically then, based on the numbers from Walmart and Amazon and the industry numbers there, you can input the number of sessions and average basket value. If you have the conversion, 1.5 is kind of an industry average, you get the potential increased revenue. And of course, if we're talking this web shop here, they of course have a lot more traffic than 200,000 per month. Maybe they even have a bigger basket size also. So you can play here with the numbers and see, also have a report generated that gives you actually the arguments that you can, you can bring to your boss or get a decision on, okay, we need to focus on performance. It's super important. So that was a long introduction to reasons why.
Maybe, Bart, just to mention that this is the return of investment calculator. I'm not sure if that's was made clear, but that's eventually what you can kind of gain more and receive as money in the end.
Specifically, so basically by improving, if you would improve these numbers, which is quite a big improvement from 17.6 seconds to 3.2 on mobile. This is the potential increased revenue you can get there. And then you can calculate how much does it cost to improve the performance, etc. So decision criteria. That's good point. But okay, so but this is not the tool that you would test performance with, is it?
No, not really. This can give you a good understanding of what potentially could be gained, but really to how you can measure the performance, we need a different set of tools, I would say.
So should we dive into some of them? I've prepared a couple of tabs here, but what are we seeing?
Let me maybe first say that I think it's quite important, as the famous quote goes, that you cannot improve something that you cannot measure or something that you don't measure. So it's really when you talk about improving performance, first we need to know like what's the current performance, right? And then by using tools and different ways to measure the performance, we can see actually what we're doing, if we're improving the performance, or actually it stays the same or it gets worse. And I think this is exactly the place where these kind of tools, they can help us to really measure the performance and give us some insights of actually what's wrong and what could be improved. And usually there are like a few tools that are well known for that. I have two, which I use quite often personally. And actually this one that we have here, pagespeed.web.dev on the screen, is one of them, because it's web-based tool that you can just get the URL from a website, throw it in there, and then you get all the metrics for mobile, desktop, and then you get also all the insights of actually if something is wrong, how can be improved. And the good part is that this is not only for developers, but actually I think, as Bort, you said in the beginning, this is a good tool for also for managers, for people like managing a project, or people which are not really into engineering. They can easily understand what's going on. So yeah, that's definitely go-to tool for me.
And this is basically you enter the URL of the page or the site, so you can go to a product page or the landing page. And
yeah,
and I use this all the time, and this should be really part of everybody that's doing something on the web. This should be a go-to tool.
Yeah. Maybe I can say also a word for the other tool that I use quite often, Lighthouse. I use Lighthouse quite often, and I'll show you even later. But kind of the idea is that we can run Lighthouse in the browser, in the inspector of the browser, right? Which gives the developer a lot of power to actually test the performance while developing. Like while you develop on localhost or your local environment, then you can run simultaneously these performance tests and see like actually the things that you're doing, how they affect the overall page loading, for example.
Yeah.
So this is also very powerful, and the tool that I think it's a must go.
Yeah, and also the Lighthouse you're referring to, it's the same underlying library or the toolkit,
Yes.
the Lighthouse testing framework used on both there.
That's
one can be used locally, or in you can also use it in automation, so you can script Milliseconds available for that also.
Yeah.
And the other is just for a manager to put in a URL and then get the score. And surprise, surprise, you're looking for a green score. You want it to be green, and you are scored. So in this case, we just took our homepage, which is got video, got a lot of images, illustrations, a lot of content. It's got some JavaScript playground things here. More scrolling. So it's a very long page. But of course, as we are really focusing on performance, as you say, milliseconds matter. We have also achieved to get a full score for both mobile and desktop on both performance, but accessibility, best practices, and SEO also. So it's a good tool to give an overview. Okay, I just want to mention that on the page speed insight here, there are two things that you see. One is the real user experience. This is actually measured from real visitors on your website. And here you also have input delay and interaction to next paint, which we will talk more about. We'll talk about the metrics. But you also have the lab data, and this is what you can also test with sites that are not available in the index, where Google doesn't have enough real world information. So it's a really simple to use tool. We'll dive a little bit into the details. It is doing performance testing from one location, right? So it's one region, and if you're a global company, maybe you would like to test from more regions also.
Yeah, that's definitely a thing, because you cannot rely that if your clients are in the States and you're measuring from Europe, that you're going to have the same experience and the same results as people that are like in the USA and you are measuring from the USA. So I think this is quite important for global companies.
True. This guy is so this is a tool that I like a lot, Lighthouse Metrics, which basically is the same as Page Speed Insight, but it's a service that checks it from 6 different locations around the world. And here you see also you get a little bit varied results because of different latency from different data centers, etc. And it's a good way to basically see how fast you are in Japan versus US versus Central Europe. This is also one of several tools out there, of course, that also allows you to have periodic monitoring. So this tool can actually monitor your site for you and have the development of the performance over time. So that is really nice for observability, where page speed, it's right now, but here you can get average scores and see the trends over time. So good tools. We'll also show one last tool, which basically is a plugin for Chrome in this case, where you are seeing the metrics in real time here. And should we start with the new metric that is being introduced?
Yeah.
Actually, you don't see that part of my screen here. So what I will do then is get back to that, because I have to share the screen, not just the window. We'll get back to that first thing.
Yeah.
So just wait, and you'll see. I'll have to reshare, but I'll get back to that. So let's then dive into a little bit of the metrics. What does it mean?
Yeah. Should we start with? Yeah. I mean, the report is nice when you look at it and everything is green, but of course, when you understand actually what are each of these fields, right, and how they impact your site, I think this is much more meaningful, because then eventually, if you're a developer, that helps you to think about what direction you should strive to kind of improve your website.
Yep.
So maybe should we start with the top left one, which is the largest contentful paint?
Yep.
Yeah, so the LCP, this is the metric that measures the time from when user first loads your page until the time when the biggest image or a text block above the fold, like in the viewport, is rendered. So this gives the user feelings that actually you land on a page and then you get kind of to see the main content of the page. And actually, this is the time which is considered that the actual website is already loaded, or gives the user enough so the user can start actually interacting with your site, like reading or scrolling or whatever. So the LCP, so a good value for LCP is considered 2.5 seconds or below, right? So if your site loads the main content above the fold in the viewport, so-called, for less than 2.5 seconds, and then I get then you're gonna get this green check mark that's you're performing well.
Yeah. And in this context, I guess it's the video that we have here loading, which is in the fold, which is, if you're going to optimize for performance, maybe keep the video below the fold. It will be easier, but there are ways to make it fast.
Actually, quite often, this is usually an image that you have in a banner or a video that you render. But I guess in the case of where we want to render a video, of course, the most logical way is first we render the first frame of the video as an image. And then eventually, when the video is loaded, we replace the image with the video. But these are some techniques that we can discuss later.
Yep.
Maybe I think it's important here to say that the LCP is kind of combined value, or it's a value that is affected by first contentful paint, which is the FCP, which is the one below, and also the time to first byte. So these two parameters, they directly affect the LCP. But maybe I can cover the first contentful paint. So again, this is the time from when the user loads your page until the user gets to see something rendered on the page, right? This is also important because it could be like a header or something, but then the user gets the feeling that actually the site is loading, is coming, right? So that's why I think it's important we improve also this time. And a good FCP time, it usually goes below 1.8 seconds, right? So if it's 1.8 or 8 or below, then we get the good score for that.
And to interrupt on the good score. So we're talking about 100. That's like a goal, but it's to be in the green, which is above 90. That's where you want to stay. Below 90, you start getting performance penalties. But the faster you are, again, it's better.
Yeah. And the thing that actually directly affect the FCP, in this case, are things that are blocking the page to load. For example, these are like loading scripts, loading CSS files, or third-party third-party scripts as well, like cookies in this case. Everything that really blocks the page from rendering will affect this metric, and then will conceptually affect also the LCP. So here, the thing that we can think to improve is like offloading this content and loading it later when it's the thread is available and when we actually render the first part of the page.
I guess you kind of see this here also.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
So the first frame here is the FCP, just like the first contentful paint. As you can see, it's not the main thing, and then in the next frame comes the video in this case, which is the main thing above the fold for our website.
And you also see that there is first contentful paint 0.7 seconds and 0.9 for the largest.
Yeah, right after that. Cool. So maybe going into the next one here, in order the first input delay. So this is really the metric that measures the time from when first the user interacts with your website until the moment that the DOM or the browser starts processing this event. So this is quite often user interactions of a sort of like clicking on a button, tapping, a keyboard event. They could be many events. And then this time it's important that we keep it under 100 milliseconds for user interaction, because of course the most natural thing is that when you click on something, you want to see a response that you actually clicked, something is happening, and so on. The thing that's
I'm thinking that I actually want to illustrate that. So you know what? We'll briefly actually.
I can continue. The thing that really affects this metering is, for example, when we load the initial page, and then we load a lot of things asynchronously, and then we keep kind of the main thread busy. And for the user cannot see really that, but the user, when the user try to interact with your application, then the user gets this delay of like things are happening, but they actually don't get any feedback. So this here is very important, that we don't try to load kind of the initial page and then everything else right away, but we load the things which are coming that can be loaded asynchronously, like on small portions when the DOM and the main thread is available. And I think this is what is going to make this this metric good.
I think I can also illustrate this. So I'm trying again to show this plugin. Yay! So you can see the metrics here, which is this is the Web Vitals plugin for Chrome. So it measures as you click on any website, and now I can do it from scratch when I'm loading a page. So now I reloaded this, but I haven't done any interactions, right? I haven't clicked anything, and this means that we get the largest and first contentful paint, time to first byte, obviously. We also get the cumulative layout shift, which I guess we'll talk about a little bit. That's basically shaking
the UI.
But the first input and the interaction to next paint is not available. So what I can do is I can add to cart. So I then performed my first input, and it took 1.6 milliseconds until you saw the interaction, and the same for interaction to next paint. The difference is that interaction to next paint will measure the average of all interactions I have here. If you do like interactions, showing and hiding are interactions. So that makes it more easy to understand those two. I would say. You can easily, yeah.
And here again, to just mention that the interaction to next paint is the new core web without that Google is introducing from March. And now the current one is the first input delay, which will be replaced.
Yeah, that's important. And this means that whenever you're testing a website, again, initial load, everything is green, that's great. But if you have add to cart, for example, which is an interaction, and here we do get pretty good scores, 0.000 milliseconds, which is instant.
I guess.
Yeah. No, just in terms of techniques also, because if you're adding something to the basket, you maybe want to store it somewhere. Maybe you store it in an API, and that is done with latency. Maybe it takes half a second, right? And then if you wait for that, that score will be really, really bad. So how can you then, Vasil, achieve this? Like we have no.
So really a good way to keep these interactions like blazingly fast is, for example, using optimistic updates. And that's for the case where we want to kind of say it in a GraphQL world, mutate the data, right? That's for example, we have iteration adding to the basket. We can optimistically show that the basket is already has the item, then do the work on the background to update the API. And if everything is fine, then the user is going to be happy because the result was displayed, right? And if something goes wrong, then we revert the basket, and then we show error message to some extent, which I think the optimistic updates will really help to improve this score quite a lot. And maybe one more technique here that I think is going to help, for example, for loading data. For example, let's say that we're paginating some list of items, and then we want to fetch the next one when the user clicks on a button like fetch more, for example. Then here, what we can do kind of in this context, for example, because the optimistic update is not going to work, then we can prefetch. So there are a lot of libraries and frameworks these days offer the capabilities to prefetch data, right? So for example, when the user hovers over the button to fetch more, we can prefetch the next list of items. So when the user clicks, we already have it in the client, and then we just display it. So there are a few techniques there that I think they will become more and more popular, and people will try to work on them to improve that score.
And this is also built into a lot of the frameworks like Remix, which this is, and Next.js, where it's actually trying to figure out where you're going to click next and prefetching that. So actually, when I'm hovering here, it's prefetching. So it means that it's a really quick transition.
Yeah, you click and it just loads.
Yeah, that's a good modern JavaScript framework customer experience.
Yeah. Otherwise, things which are very complicated to do yourself. I think using the frameworks the right way, it helps a lot. Cool. We can here move to the next one, cumulative layout shift. And this is really a score that measures the shift in the layout when we load the page. I think it's a score between 0 and 0.1. And this quite often happens, for example, when we load images, let's say, above the fold in the viewport, that do not have specified width and height. So when they load, all of a sudden everything below jumps. I think this is kind of the most obvious example. Of course, there are other examples with this issue with loading fonts, for example, where we load one font where we kind of show the text in one font, which is the default in many cases, and then we load actually the font for the website, which is totally different. Then everything shifts and jumps, and that drives the user really kind of, it has bad feelings and doesn't help the user experience.
You kind of see it here. It's a little bit small, but the first frame here, you see that there's some lines around where the image should be. So because the size is set, and there's actually some border things on this, that's why you see it, which means that the content below is already pushed down the size of the image. So there's space for the image to be rendered. And if not, you would kind of see the next content, maybe some headline text or something like this first, and then when the image pops, it will be pushed down if you haven't set the sizes as Vasil says. So that's the most typical example of this. Oh, the whole website jumped.
Yeah. Or it happens also with the content that you have a button, you click on it, and then all of a sudden the content is pushed down. So that button you clicked is not any longer there, but you click on a different button instead. And there's a lot of things that need to be considered around this.
Buttons changing place.
Yeah.
Something and you hit the wrong button.
Yeah.
So and this is simple. It's automatically measured for you. So that's a simple thing. So those are really the different metrics that goes into Core Web Vitals. And the INP, interaction to next paint, as mentioned, will replace the first input delay from March of this year. So that's important. Also, now is the time to measure it and be aware of it and improve it. On that note, improve it, because one thing is to measure it and be in the green, having more than 90 scores on your mobile and desktop. That's where you want to be.
Mm-hmm.
But when developing and when you have a problem, you can dive further into these details, because there's actually a lot more further down in the report here.
Yeah.
I think you prepared an example.
Yes, I prepared an example, but before that, I want to say like a few words about some common performance issue that I've seen in my practice.
Yeah.
And I think the first and kind of the most common one is really providing images and assets kind of all together, which are not optimized. What does it mean? So, for example, quite often I've seen websites where we render the developer decided to render images which are like much more bigger than actual size of the image that needs to be, or the image is in a media format that is really old, like JPEG, for example, that is kind of a little bit outdated now. There are much more modern variants. Or like being on a mobile, but you're seeing a desktop image, for example. This is quite often as well, which means you download a bigger image. It takes longer time to download it. You have more megabytes, and all this kind of goes together to what you started like in the beginning board saying about the environment, right? Because we process much more than actually we need to.
Yep.
So image optimization, I think this is the first issue that I've seen kind of the most. The next kind of big issue that quite often I've seen are loading fonts, font families, right? Because quite often developers, they load just the whole font family with all different font weights, and that's kind of brings more content. And actually, in the end, you end up using 2 or 3, and I think this is quite normal. So we just should try to load the fonts, the one that we need, and then use the modern kind of CSS to display, to swap the font when it's loaded and stuff like that. Also very important to load the font family in a file format that is kind of minimum, like UF2, for example, and things like that. So this is also a kind of a big concern. So another issue that I've seen quite often is, for example, when we have pagination for a site, and then we load the whole data set at once, and then we hide the kind of the first page, and then we just render the second page, but like all the data is already on the client. And that may be not needed, right? Because maybe the user will never navigate to the second page. Like, why would you need to load all the data at once? So here there is a lot of things that can be done to improve performance and get less data to the client and be fast. Just load what you need on demand. Loading scripts, for example, is another issue that I've seen a lot, like third-party scripts, for example, which are blocking the main content of the page. So this affects straight the FCP, the LCP, all the metrics, because we are waiting for third-party service to be loaded before we actually present something. So in this here, what we can do, we can offload this kind of scripts into not offload them from the main thread and put them, for example, in a web worker. So there is a library which is called Party Town. which I think which does exactly that, right? So it takes these third-party scripts and run them on a web worker, and then you just consume the result of it.
And examples of, I mean, third-party scripts, of course, anything analytics, and you don't have to block the main thread, meaning that you stop all the rendering of the website for the user because you really want to report those analytics to Google or whatever analytics you're reporting. Offload it, right? So it doesn't block cookie pop-ups, cookie consents,
same. Yeah.
which is usually implemented quite horribly, I must say. Blocking the full screen, blocking the main thread, killing performance, killing user experience. There's better ways to do that. So those types of things, or like star rating and comments and things like this, the third-party services that you add on your web shop, make sure that they are not blocking the main thread. That's the takeaway there.
Maybe here is the time also to mention that we talk about thread, but for people who are not familiar, so JavaScript is a single thread language, which means that everything works on a single code stack. So when the main thread is occupied, even like user interactions, clicking or navigating or typing will not happen until that event happens on the thread, right? So that's why it's important that we keep the thread available as much as possible. So all the user interactions, they go with priority, and that's what also React 18 will take care, for example, right? With concurrent mode, and where different actions are prioritized because the user interactions are more important than loading, for example, cookie notice or something to that extent. So these are some of kind of the most common pitfalls I've seen, and I think it's important that everybody, every developer, keeps kind of an eye on them, and remember that this is definitely something that can affect straight your web performance. But what I prepared today really is about images. I want to show like how simple is and how we can really do. How can we achieve what we just optimizing images? So what we have here is a simple. Okay, let me just use my keyboard. Okay, so what we have here is really a simple e-commerce that sells furniture, as you can see, and it has like a bunch of images and content. As you can see, it's kind of big. So what we can do, this keyboard. What we can do in this case is I want to run like a lighthouse, right? As I said, it's very nice for developers to get some idea of what potentially can be improved. So this here is the lighthouse that runs in the inspector, and I'll start the report. So let's see what lighthouse will give us. And as you can see yourself already, like loading the main image or the LCP in the viewport really it's kind of sloppy and takes a lot of time. So what we get here is performance score of 66, which is kind of low. And as you can see, the largest contentful pane, as I said, it takes around 10 seconds, which is extremely bad. And you can see here, the first frame is completely empty. Then the first contentful pane, it's already kind of render something, which is good. And then over here comes the main content for this about the viewport. And if I scroll a bit down, there are a lot of different metrics that can be seen here. But for example, the first one is properly sized images, right? And it appears that kind of the main image is much more bigger than actually it needs to be. And for example, there is also certain images in next generation formats. It's also because they are just PNGs, for example. And a few other things here that you can think. Some of them, for example, like minify JavaScript, it happens because I'm running from localhost. So this is something that you cannot really avoid. But of course, when you go into production, the JavaScript should be minified, right? This is something that there is no need to say. Cool. So then let's inspect here. Let's inspect here the image and see. So as you can see, the image that we render is enormous, right? It's 5,000 pixels by 5 megabytes of size, and then it's a JPEG format. So let's see how actually we can change that and have an image which fits the content to start with. Okay, so here I will switch to VS Code. So this here is the code that renders the image. And what we can do actually in this case is adding a new attribute to the image tag over here, which is the source set. So what is the source set? The source set takes a pair of two items. The first one is the image URL, and then the second is the image width descriptor, describes how big is the image. And then the source set could be like multiple images and widths, which are divided by comma. And so then the browser knows like which image to take eventually. And I think this is a good place here to mention that for this kind of optimizations, we should really strive to use the platform. This is very important. Like, don't go for some custom JavaScript solution that may do the same, but eventually after a few months or a year, it's not going to work because things change. Use the platform. So the platform offers this way of like loading images, right? So this is the most natural thing that we should be doing. So the source set is this, and then as I said, it takes string. So what I will do here, I'll add it like this. And the first parameter is the source, the URL for the image. So now if I go back and I will inspect this again, you see that the image here goes around 680 pixels wide, right? So what we can do, we just need to find an image which is slightly bigger than that to make sure that it will be perfectly rendered. How can we find this image like in different sizes in different formats? So one way is like if the image is in Crystallize, of course. Over here, this is the Crystallize admin panel. And this is actually the asset organizer where I see the image. What I can do over here, I can just copy the URL for the image very easily. So over here, you see that there is a image that was pre-generated for me, kind of all different combination of width and height in different formats, right? So Crystallize is doing that for you. The moment you upload one asset, then you get it. So from here, I'm just copy the link of the image that I want to add over here. Then I'll just paste it and I'll say that this is actually 768 width. And then I will add here the original image as a second option, right? I will add it over here and I'll say that this is, let's say, 1240 width. Cool. So this is gives some information for the browser, like what are our options. And then the second very important parameter here is the sizes, which will tell the browser which image to render depending on the viewport. So over here, if we say that max width of 1240 pixels, then we need to render the 768 pixels. If not, we provide a fallback as a second parameter after the comma, right? Is the 1000 pixels image. Cool. So if you save this and then we go back to our site. So over here, as you can see, we are above 1400 pixels, and what the site loaded is the original image. There is no difference, right? But then if I go below that criteria and I refresh over here, what the browser will do in this case, let's see over here, you see that the browser now loaded the image, which is at size 768, right? So just the browser is picking that image. And then if we go to like a bigger screen, the browser will automatically replace the small image for the bigger image, and you don't need to do anything about it. This is the kind of the good part about it. So let's go back.
But does this mean that you can also do responsive images for mobile in this way?
Yeah,
it's a leading question, but
that's definitely when we specify different sizes for different viewports, the browser knows what to render based on the viewport. So when the viewport is small on a mobile, it will render one image. But for example, if you turn your phone into a landscape mode, it will render the bigger image. And that's just doing, the platform is doing that for us, right? We don't need to do anything about it.
Yeah.
So I want to run Lighthouse again here. So our current score is at 66. So let's see what we'll get with just this one optimization that we did on the main image, just rendering a smaller image, right? That's the only thing that we did. And whoa, it's skyrocketed 93 already. It's quite good of improvement. I didn't expect to go that high, but it seems that's what we get.
Okay, we're done.
We are above 90, yeah. Okay, maybe I want to show you quickly also something that's, so you can see that it's actually loading different images for different sizes is very easy. Maybe one last thing that I want to show here is actually if we want to load different media types, right? Because Lighthouse was telling us that actually we can load the images in modern media types like AV, for example. And to do that, it's quite straightforward. So we have the picture tag, right? And then what we can do here, inside the picture tag, we can have the image tag again. But on top of that, we can also have a source tag. So what is the source tag? So the source tag takes the same parameters as before that were on the image tag, right? But then this type, we can say that the type of the image. So this is image slash JPEG. And then what we need to do here, we just need another source tag that comes over here. But this time we will say that this is image AVIF, right? AVIF, like that. And we need, again, to just copy the links. So I will go to Crystallize again, the same place, copy the AVIF link, and I will replace here the first one. And then I will copy here the biggest AVIF that was generated from me, from Crystallize, and I'll just replace it here as well. So now if I go back to the browser, if I hover over here, you see that the browser, the image that is loaded already in the browser is the AVIF format. So the browser is just doing that for us, knowing that the AVIF is the better format, which means like more compressed, less size, the same quality of the image. So it's going to use that one. And if the AVIF is not supported, that's going to fall back to the JPEG, which the platform is doing that for us.
And these things you're showing now, this is regardless of framework or anything, because this is HTML, right? This is basic internet knowledge.
Yeah, exactly. And see, we're already kind of improved our images a lot, and that's kind of nice, but it feels like that we are doing a little bit more than actually what we need to do. So because what we do
seems quite effort to copy all these links all the time, right?
Yeah, copy this link, different URL. So this doesn't really work that way. But what I did here, for example, I came up with a very simple image component, is this one. So I'm going to use it now, and I'll show you what I mean when I say I'm going to use it. So I'll say that this is the image component that I have above over here. And then over here, I will spread the image that I get from the API. So you see that here over it, we render the image URL. I will just spread the whole image that I get from the API. And the only thing that I need to add is actually these sizes over here. It's like one additional parameter. So now I will remove this custom thing that we did together very quickly. And over here in our image component, I'm going to use the React.js components. So this is React.js components is our open source component library for React. And in this library, we export an image component, which I named here Crystallize image for the sake of being different from the one that I'm exporting. So I will copy the Crystallize image over here. And then all the props that I'm getting from above, right? I'll just spread over here. So what is this all spreading about? Is that from the API, when you fetch an image from Crystallize, we will provide you with the main image source with the width and height for the image, and then we will provide also with all the variants that we generated, like different sizes, different formats, right? Everything is made for you. So now, if I inspect this one, you actually get to see that the source set is populated now with all different variants and different sizes and everything. It's just set for me. And the only thing I need to provide is the size attribute. And then if we're on mobile, we specify the small images, and so on. So this kind of makes things very easy, right? And that's you don't need to worry about it because these things are just optimized. But kind of using the right tools, knowing how to optimize images, I think this is what matters and it's important in this case.
Yeah, it's it's kind of cool what you can do with just HTML. I would like to say these days, but it's not really introduced right these days. But it didn't used to be like this, to put it like that, in
Yes.
HTML. So this is pretty awesome, and also the new image formats that you have is also providing a lot of benefits there.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
Yeah, that's what I wanted to show. Like it's very easy, so just everybody should pay attention to that. It's you cannot just go over it. I mean, it brings so much value.
And of course, there's many other things that can lead to performance issues, as Vasil mentioned earlier. The important part is test it, debug it, figure out what's actually slow, and then figure out a way to improve that. And this is not something that you should do the week before launch or the week after, which is typically the clients are saying, "Oh, this site is slow."
Yeah.
Well, it's not optimized, right? Because
No.
independent of whatever tool you have, you can always make a slow website when you're building custom front ends. If you're using the tools wrong, if you're not using the proper craftsmanship on the on the implementation and not doing testing. So to me, performance it's not a nice to have. It's it's a requirement, and we actually have in our own, if you're deploying something to our website, in the CI, which is the automatic testing happening before the website is being pushed to production, we do a performance test. And if the score, and I think we test a couple of different pages, if the score is below 90, it fails. So it's part of the testing, and it fails. You will not be allowed to push to production. So automated testing, getting this into the culture of the development processes, it's, to me, it's not a nice to have. It's a must have, and it's part of proper, what we call internet craftsmanship. It needs to be done in a proper way. And on that note, I just want to say that always be hunting milliseconds, because the milliseconds do matter. And we will see you in the next one.
Yep. Bye.
Bye-bye.